plans to defend ourselves because the situation was getting quite hopeless, and we were preparing to die honorably.
In his dark room, he is finally alone.
With spools of suffering set out in ordered rows.
The only light is red and softly glows.
As though this were a church and he, a priest, preparing to intone a mass.
Belfast, Beirut, Northam, all flesh is grass.
War is partly madness, mostly insanity, and the rest of it's schizophrenia. You do ask yourself, why am I here? What is my purpose? What's this got to do with photography? And it goes on, the questioning. You're trying to stay alive, you're trying to take pictures, you're trying to justify your presence there, and you think, what good is this going to do anyway? These people have already been killed. There were many battles within my own mind before I got to these major conflicts. And when I got there, I was even more confused. I try to stay calm. I try not to indulge myself in this picture taking. You know, it was something I was meant to do, but you know, how far was I allowed to take it? You know, there was a lot of hypocrisy spinning around inside my own mind at the time. I didn't really think it was right to be there, because I sometimes felt that the people who were doing these terrible things thought you know that I was okaying it, of which I certainly wasn't.
This poem is about war photography.
How do you normally start with a poem? After you've read it, what do you do next?
First impressions.
First impressions? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I always like to start with the who, what, when, where questions. So you can create a narrative to the poem, a kind of, you know, the story of the poem, because you'll find that most of them do have it. So let's think about who. I mean, how many people are involved in the poem?
I don't even know. It's a poem. I don't know.
Then why is it so dark if it's about a war photographer?
War, not war.
It's a war.
This man, how he sought approval.
How the blood stain into foreign dogs. I think he's murdered her.
Just smacks to me of someone who was either captured or someone who did that kind of stuff to other people.
I've got war, obviously, in every verse.
Is it saying like where war is, like in those days, that's where war was. That's what it's saying. That is what it's saying.
But then it starts to change as soon as it gets to the end.
He's been somewhere.
Yeah, then he's on about how he's walking through rural England in fields that don't explode.
Getting darker by the hour. Will I wake up from a dark, dark daydream? Nothing can wake me from myself. Not you or no.
Flesh is grass. What?
That doesn't make sense. Solution and slop and drink beneath his hands which do not tremble, thou seem
to now.
But he's not happy, is he?
No, it's like, maybe like PTSD. I like just finally alone. That's what I'm waiting for.
What were you talking about then? Post-traumatic?
Yeah, PTSD.
Don't say it's the end, 'cause
agony, like something over the black and white, and 100 agonies, I'd be like, I've got a war, something like murder, something like that. Don't know.
Who was a war photographer and has come back from war and is now sat in his room going through the photos, but it's bringing back memories from what he's seen and the horrors that he's seen whilst out in the war.
And it's interesting because it seems to me the poem's about the kind of pointlessness of his job, really, on one level, but also about its importance.
Carol Ann Duffy doesn't expand on why the war photographer became a war photographer, but we can assume that one of the reasons people do the job is because they think it's important to record the terrible things that happen.
We want to know what's happening in the world, and the journalist feels it's important to tell us what's going on in the world. But on the other hand, some of the images that they use when they are telling us the truth can be seen as shocking, and they're just to entertain.
It's about how he's the witness to and how he's the keeper of secrets.
People open their Sunday papers and they look at pictures of starvation before they have their Sunday lunch, and pictures of terrible things happening to people with their legs blown off, and they think it's interesting, but also it's slightly entertaining for some people.
However, recording it isn't the same as people caring. For example, in the poem, Carol Ann Duffy says that it will slip into the Sunday supplements, where people will read it in between a bath and a lunchtime beer, showing that on a Sunday, many of the horrors that we read in the Sunday papers are things that slip out of our consciousness very quickly, maybe because it's too painful for us to carry all the world's woes in our head.
So we've got a problem with the way we report things in the news, haven't we? We've got a responsibility to tell the truth, but on the other hand, a responsibility not to titillate. Is that a bad word?
Here's the war photographer, right, who's a man. You've then got a mention of a man who was killed in front of this war photographer.
Half on ghost, aren't you?
And you've got his crying wife, she's mentioned. You've also got the editor that's mentioned, and then the reader of the magazine in which these pictures are published.
Okay.
So there's several different people mentioned, but only really him.
Okay.
Is like we only really explore his take on it.
Yeah, you'll find Carol Ann Duffy offers a voice to someone who doesn't usually have a voice, so it's whether it's like a character like Medusa or Havisham. So she's like the war photographer, because he's alone in his dark room and he probably doesn't get to say, because he's usually the voice behind the camera.
The man behind the
curtain
curtain
speak.
is what we're going with. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the who, we've got the who's, we've got several different people mentioned. We've got the what, which is basically it's about him and his job, which is to take pictures of suffering, which he mentions in the war zones that he's visited. When, I find is probably one of the most interesting things about this, because you've got several different conflicts which are mentioned, which puts it into a modern time period. So you've got Belfast, Beirut. I can't say that properly.
Belfast, Beirut, I don't know.
Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh.
Belfast, Brim, Phnom Penh. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh. Belfast, Beirut, Bethune. Belfast, Beirut, Phnom Penh. War versus France.
War was in Belfast, war in Beirut, war in Cambodia.
Sometimes people used to say to me, "Do you have nightmares?" And I would say, "No, only in the daytime, when my eyes are open and I'm awake and my memory is, on full alert." So when I say I love photography, I love being in my darkroom, but even my darkroom is a haunted place. I go in there and in that red light, it's like being in a womb, and I play the music, which is, it's only classical music. It somehow pleases me, but at the same moment, it takes me down and down and down to where I don't want to go. It's like as if I'm drowning in a very deep ocean, and I'm trying to get back to the top again to see the daylight. So, I don't just take photographs, I think.
The poem starts in his dark room.
In his dark room.
Which is quite a strange way to start, really, because that's the end product of his job.
Do you think because he starts off with like the end product, it's that kind of showing like the journey that he went through to get this, so he's being really quite reflective?
Yeah, I think that's definitely. And then she ends it with him on a plane, going off to another location. So it kind of goes full circle, showing that his job doesn't really.
That's really nice. About the narrating style.
Yeah, so she's all knowing, isn't she, about him? But she doesn't really reveal anything
too much about him.
It's all implied, isn't it? So I would say you'd probably just say it's a third person.
You just go for third person.
When his picture is developing, there's a sense of development in terms of where the poem's going as well. So as his picture becomes developed, his memory becomes clear, a bit like the picture becoming clear. And he takes him back to where he was when he took the picture.
How do you think the photographer feels about his experiences of war?
Probably sad because he's seen what is actually happening.
Yeah, he's seen it and he can't help.
Yeah, he
sees death everywhere.
It says half-formed ghost, so he could be the half-formed ghost because he feels like he's not the man he used to be now that he knows what happens.
Yeah, because he has the ability to help, but he won't because he's the photographer and he can only transcribe what actually happened. What do you think, though?
I think what it means is, like, at the time that he took the photo, like, it just seemed fine, it was his job, another person dies. But now that he's seeing it, he's beginning to realise how horrible it really is. So
I saw a whole village trying to evacuate because they were being attacked to somewhere with more safety, like a school building. And there was this one old lady who was lame and she had 2 sticks and she really couldn't get those legs moving, and there was a British soldier trying to coax her along and persuade her to hurry up before she'd probably lose her life. And I was with a friend of mine, I said, this is ridiculous. And I took one picture of the soldier and the old lady and I put my cameras down and I scooped this old lady up in my arms, and it's like scooping up some rag doll that had fallen out of a child's pram. I just ran and ran with her. I don't know why I did it, but I didn't really want to see that old lady get shot down and killed. And I went back to my position, so to speak, as a photographer, and I started carrying on. But it made me feel good, it made me feel as if I wasn't just there as some voyeur that was enjoying other people's, misery and possible deaths. It's a very fine line. I've been constantly accused of taking terrible pictures and people saying, "Did you ever help anyone?" Of course I did, but I don't want to brag about it. It's just I did it sometimes to clear my own conscience.
He has a job to do. Solutions slop in trays beneath his hand.
Which did not tremble then, though seem to now.
Rural England, home again, to ordinary pain which simple weather can dispel,
to fields which don't explode beneath the feet of running children in a nightmare heat.
So, right, in each stanza you'll find a contrast. So, like in stanza 1, you've got the word dark and light, like quite close together, which highlights contrast.
Is there a technical word for that we'd have in poetry?
Contrast is a really good word to use.
So just use the contrast.
But if it's a little bit stronger, you could call it juxtaposition. But I don't think it's as far as that. I think it's just plain old contrast. You've got lots of alliteration as well. So you've got the solutions slop in trays beneath his hands, which contrasts nicely with the alliteration of the B non-fen. So you've got like solution slop, which
consonants
makes
it sound aggressive, and the solution slop because it's the soft consonants. It makes it a lot more smoother, a lot more gentle, a lot more. That's him reflecting back on the harsher times that he's just been to.
And then in the second stanza, you've got the contrast between rural England, which is obviously his home, where he's returned to his war photographer room, and you've got the adjectives ordinary and simple to describe England, but then we get taken to his war zone, which is contrastingly described as a nightmare heat. So you've got the kind of plain, ordinary weather of England contrasting with the nightmare heat of these foreign places that he's been to.
And then as you get into the third stanza, it suddenly starts to change. Something starts to happen, so the pictures start to develop, and it's a stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes. So it's somebody that he's met before, somebody's on the pictures, but he might at the time he might not have took a lot of time to recognise this stranger or what was going on. He was just there to do his job, to take the pictures. And then now that he's actually got the time by himself to reflect on what he's just seen, now he can look at the individuals.
He feels the most difficult part of the job is.
A good question, Layla. In the poem War Photographer by Carol Ann Duffy, the most sort of difficult to read part, I think, is the description of the photographer almost asking permission from the wife of the man who's been killed. Not only does he have to deal with upsetting things happening right in front of him, but he must feel as if he's intruding on the victim's grief in order for him to be able to do his job properly. He can't get involved, he can't help, he can't save lives, and he can't apologise for what he's doing. He just has to do it and try and be as dispassionate as possible.
I knocked on the door, I tapped on this door, there was no answer, and I let myself in, and the first thing I was greeted with was warm blood. These men had been murdered the day before, and the warm early morning sunlight had penetrated through the glass door of this house. And I closed the door and I tiptoed around the room, and I got myself in a corner and I was taking the first shot, and suddenly the door opened and to my horror the whole family burst in. And I thought, my God, they're going to be really cross finding me in here. To my astonishment, they weren't, so I carried on photographing. And there was a woman who started screaming like mad, and the truth was that it was her husband who was just below my feet who was dead, and a new husband at that. They'd only been married a week, and the Greeks came the day before and attacked this community and murdered these people in cold blood in this house.
Something is happening. A stranger's features faintly start to twist before his eyes.
A half-formed ghost. He remembers the cries of this man's wife.
How he sought approval without words to do what someone must.
And how the blood stained into foreign dust.
100 agonies in black and white, from which his editor will pick out 5 or 6 for Sunday's supplement.
The reader's eyeballs prick with tears between the bath and pre-lunch beers. From the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living, and they do not care.
You've got how the blood stained into foreign dust. He's actually going somewhere that he isn't familiar with, but also he's unfamiliar with the sights that he's seeing as well. So it's foreign to him. A nice double meaning for the word stained, as in the actual literal stain of the blood, but then also how it's stained his memory. Like he won't be able to get rid of it.
The shame hasn't come back with him. The memories are out there, but it's still with him, even though he tries to deny that it's affecting him.
Yeah, and I think he uses it to try and disconnect himself from what he's going over there to do. Like he's making sure it's foreign, it's far away from him, to try and get it out of his mind.
So at this point it's really starting to mirror the process of developing the photograph, because it's really going into the details.
Yeah, it's an extended metaphor that runs throughout the poem.
And the other thing I was looking at is stares as well.
Yeah.
Stares impassively. That one really sticks out.
I do like this.
Describes the pictures as 100 agonies. So he's obviously bringing the feelings of the people that they're experiencing in the pictures.
And they're not pictures,
the dark
it's not
room.
100 pictures, it's 100 agonies, so it's like a physical, he's holding the agonies.
He's having a visceral reaction
Yeah.
in many respects to the photograph.
And it's black and white, so it's just the hard facts, that is what he's holding. So he's holding, like absolute proof of all these agonies and pains and things that happen in the war.
It takes on more and more meaning, doesn't it? There's a nightmare for him, nightmare for the people involved.
And the fact that it's almost don't feel real to him, does it? It's like that hyper reality. It's all just happening through a lens, so it's almost like he's not experiencing it.
one meaningful picture I took in that battle was a man who'd been hit in both legs, an American Marine. He was being supported by two friends. And if ever I thought at the very moment in my atheistic kind of mind that I was looking at something purely religious, was of this man who looked like Jesus Christ being taken down from the cross.
The church image kind of sticks with me. It makes me think about the stained glass windows and the glowing lights sort of coming through. You can kind of see lights flashing.
All the language around that gives you that sense. And there's also references to religion, so it's something sacred, something really special.
It is almost, he's almost placed in a godlike position, as is shown in the first stanza when we've got the church imagery. So he's in his dark room, and it's described like a church with ordered rows, and a light is red and softly glows. And it even says as though this were a church and he a priest. So then this then links to the final statement on that stanza. All flesh is grass, which is a statement from the Old Testament.
And then it ends with a line from the Bible again, a line from Ecclesiastes, which says, all flesh is grass. In other words, everybody in the world in the end descends to nothing, to grass, to dust. We go back to dust, which is quite a pessimistic view of the world and reality. So, on the whole, I don't think this red light has got anything positive. It's a very negative image, which I always used to think of a red light being positive in a church. But this is just bringing up the cruelty of humanity, and it doesn't really say much of a spiritual nature. It's more of about man than God.
And then halfway through the night I heard gunfire and I woke up in a great sweat. This Rhodesian had got drunk and shot these two African boys who were doing all the laundry and the cooking for these mercenaries for breakfast. And I remember looking at one of these poor black boys. He was about 12 years old and his eyes were open. And I looked at the mercenary and he said, they asked for it. He said, I found a weapon on them, which wasn't true. You know, some of these mercenaries, they just had a lust for killing Africans. I hated them in the end.
The fourth stanza takes us to the pictures are developed, and then he talks quickly about his editor and his reader, both of whom appear to be very cold. He's representing them very coldly.
Which would be the general public, really.
Yeah, so the reader of the magazine is just people in general. But then also we get this impression of the war photographer going back out on another mission to get pictures. From the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living and they do not care. So he's kind of
desensitized.
He's kind of caught between.
Yeah, he's a little bit indifferent now. He's been doing it for so long. He reflects in his dark room, but once the pictures are out and they're published and nobody else cares, he's very passive about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he's just sort of like, he's probably desensitized from being relatively involved with the pictures and quite emotionally attached to them. And as soon as the reader who gets upset between the bath and the pre-lunch beers, so for that minute bit of the day,
so as in it'll stay with them for maybe an hour, whereas for him it's a stain
forever.
Yeah.
He's trying to justify the reasons why he takes pictures.
Maybe he believes in each memory along with the picture, so once the picture's taken he's got the picture there of whatever happened, he forgets about that and then moves on to another picture, leaving that behind.
Right, and how could you link that, do you reckon, to the way it's structured?
In a way, each one's shaped like a picture. Like it's a small, it's like a small, almost like a memory. The actual form of it represents in each memory. That's why the full stop shows that it's over and that he has to move on to the new one.
He does look at his pictures. Each picture brings back a memory of what was happening at the time when he took it. And he's got lots of really disturbing memories.
It's like a snapshot. Like he takes the pictures, like the snapshot, and it's like a little snapshot of each memory. And And at the end it also says, from the aeroplane he stares impassively at where he earns his living and they do not care. Like, they don't care.
Yeah.
Like
Really.
a powerful thing to end on.
This ending, if you're familiar with the poem, what's it called? Simple Soldier Boy. I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life with empty joy. That one. If you know that one, I think it ends quite with a similar kind of message that people who don't experience the war zones have no idea what it's like, and there's a kind of resentment there, I feel, for this war photographer. And then we are detached from him. She's doing that by not giving him a name, basically. We know his profession, but apart from that, we know nothing else about him. Throughout the poem, he's referred to as just he, so personal pronoun rather than an actual name. So there's a sense of detachment between us and him. There's a sense of detachment between him and his editor, because he just calls him his editor. So that kind of gives the impression that that's all he sees this man as. And then there's another detachment between the photographer and the reader who looks at these pictures.
So what about the structure of the poem? Is the 4 stanzas relevant?
Well, it's a very ordered poem, and on the surface it's a regular poem, because there's 4 stanzas, and each stanza contains 6 lines of roughly equal length. Like, it looks symmetrical.
Got some GCSE knowledge in here, but it's got like some short punctuation type thing. So it was like he's like listing it. It's not like flowing in emotion. So it's kind of just like.
Yeah, his like sentence structure is quite interesting, and the way the stanzas are 6 lines each is quite structured, which is quite nice.
Do you think there's a reason behind that?
Yeah, I think it's probably because, like, the military obviously have to have some kind of structure, so that could reflect how they have, like, I don't know what they're called, like different regiments and things to be, and that could reflect that.
I think that messing with the chronological order is a nice way of making us focus in and out of different aspects of the war photographer's life. At the beginning of the poem, the war photographer is alone in a place which is described almost as a cathedral or at an altar, the dark room. And then we zero in on that particular aspect. We then use the dark room as a way for the war photographer to think of their memories of their previous mission. So most of the poem is an extended flashback. We're then brought back to the present, so it is out of chronological order. But I think if she just described matter-of-factly what the war photographer has to do and how he feels about it, that wouldn't necessarily have the hook of us being with the photographer in his private moment of doubt and grief.
I'm nearly 75 years of age now. I still have some energy left, not a lot, but I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying to eradicate, the things we've been talking about. I'm just gonna photograph the landscape, and the English landscape to me is my heaven, my form of heaven. The one thing that upsets me about it is, like all other things, there is always a threat surrounding the things you love. When I hear a chainsaw in the distance here, I think a tree is dying. When I hear shooting, when there's pheasant shooting, I think there's going to be some blood somewhere. That the sound of gunfire immediately switches on another part of my nervous system. So I feel, as much as you try to run away from these things, someone always presses a button and says, here's a reminder of, what you used to do.
In his dark room, he is finally alone.
With spools of suffering set out in ordered rows.
The only light is red and softly glows.
As though this were a church and he, a priest,
Belfast, Beirut, non-femme, all flesh is grass.